Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Nick Kanoki, the Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I'm very excited for our conversation today with Shirley Ben-Dak, Vice President of Strategy at SWAN, the Smart Water Network Forum. Before we get underway, we just want to thank our patron members, as well as our other organizational members for making this possible. SWAN is a partnering organization, so especially thank you to them and Definitive Logic for sponsoring this week's ALN Thursday at 3, and for next Thursday's ALN at Thursday at 3 with James Downs, Asset Management Executive at Definitive Logic. And with that, we'll just say, if you're out there watching, we would love to hear from you. So please send any comments, questions, or feedback to the chat. Or you can use the Q&A function of this Zoom webinar. Mike, Executive Director for the ALN, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Nick. And it's a beautiful 72-degree day in November in Chicago. How is it where you're at?
Well, it's not like behind me. This is somewhere in California, but here it's cold in Lander, Wyoming. It is very cold.
Yeah, that's coming here this weekend. So people on the East Coast, enjoy what we're sending you, because Nick is sending you something colder. But anyway, today's going to be really fun. We were talking with Shirley before the show, and there's so much to talk about. So this is going to be a really tricky question. Shirley, thank you for joining us. And we always start the program with, how did you get where you're at in your asset management journey? And where you're at is very complex. You got multiple streams going. So how do you want to approach that question?
First of all, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the time, the opportunity, and to just get to know a little bit of the ALN network has been fantastic. My journey starts kind of far from here. I'm originally from Israel. For those that are familiar, at least in terms of the water sector, we're no stranger to the need to innovate. And so that's kind of my initial journey, let's call it, into more of the environmental field, sustainability field. Started when I was young, just conserving water due to really lack of freshwater resources. So our conversations around the dinner table were quite different than some kids from different ages. So it started a long time ago. And then most of my career has really been focused on sustainable cities, and now the last 7 or so years really focused on the water sector and optimizing different networks worldwide across drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater networks. So my asset management took on it started more of a macro environmental aspect of it in terms of sustainability. And then recently, I would say for the past, I guess that's recently, has been more on a micro level, more focused within the water sector in terms of assets. So that's more or less where I'm at now. And it never stops, I guess, the learning in terms of what we mean by assets from just a component level all the way to a systems level. So I think I'm still trying to find that right place for myself within that. It gets complicated, as you mentioned, but I definitely see myself within that nexus of systems thinking, systems and asset management with a little bit of a focus. My heart is in the water sector for sure.
Okay, so I'm going to go into, I didn't prep you for this one at all.
Yeah, go for it.
But knowing that's your background now, what's your ideal future?
That's my ideal future.
I mean, and not just for yourself, but, for the water. I mean, I'm really highly idealistic. I say everything in Star Trek eventually becomes true. We've got doors that slide open. We've got, but Star Trek they were able to start exploring the galaxies because there was peace on Earth. And when they're not fighting against each other, we can do really great things. So that's the part of Star Trek that I want to make true. And asset management is clearly like blowing things up is not good asset management. So that's simple. And then once you get that part down, you need food, clothing, and shelter. Well, food, most important part of food is water. You can go a couple of days without food, but you need water. So let's focus on water.
Right. No, it's interesting. I can tell you when I studied my master's at Columbia back in 2013 on sustainability management. Really, everyone around me was saying, why would you go study that? And today I've made a little bit more of a case for it in terms of really this kind of a different type of thinking, right? Where we look at, rather than looking at just at investing, for example, in capital infrastructure projects, that's insufficient, right? It's about how do you optimize that asset, right, to perform over a certain period of time, right? And I think
Its
that's
value. Yeah.
right, maximize value. And sometimes we invest, right, in infrastructure that doesn't need or doesn't require that investment at that stage, right? And how can we better reallocate our resources based on data? And so I think going back to your question about where I see the future, I see one that's not guided by bias and false assumptions and lack of data, but really data-backed decisions. And I think that's at the heart of what I do in my private work and what I do in my collective work over the years with SWAN, the organization that I'm representing and that we can talk about shortly. But I think that's the future I see. So I don't have obviously all the solutions, nor do vendors out there, even though some of them claim and with shiny solutions. But I think collectively we're in the right path, and I've seen that water, at least specifically the water sector over the 7 years, move towards that path of being more data driven in their strategies, whether it's a full 5-year strategy that's based on clear KPIs and metrics to stay accountable, or just different benchmarks and frameworks to help guide, right, their digital maturity and their digital transformation journey. So I think that future, to me, that's what it looks like. It's data-based, it's backed, it's a little bit more innovative in terms of adoption of where we stand, maybe a little bit of a difference in that risk averse or hesitancy mindset. I think that would be a nice future, but I think the onus is on all of us to prove the value, and that future is based on that move to things that are a little bit more evidence-based, while making room, truthfully making room for innovation to take place. And it doesn't have to be digital, but it would be great for that to happen, because I've just seen the value there. But I'll stop there.
This is the original digital tool.
Right.
It can help
true.
you up and can push you down. You know,
Yeah.
we need to be able to take a picture of that. You know, it's like, yeah, it's
Right.
always digital because it's
Right.
us. So
Right.
that was I loved that answer. I'm so glad I thought to ask you that.
It's a great
And
question. Yeah.
of the many things that you said there, I'm going to go to what you're saying. You said, I don't have the answer. Well, no one person does.
Right.
And
Right.
that's why we're a network, and that's why you're a network. We're saying that
Right.
we have a process. And if you collaborate and
Right.
work together, it's not one answer, it's unifying the intelligence of all of the people to be able to solve problems like we never have before. And we're seeing that over and over and over again. So it's so good to join with another network association. We have a memorandum of understanding, and that means we're going to help promote each other in our missions of improving management of assets, and specifically your case, water assets. But before we talk more about that, you have a business that you also do. You got your master's, and I hope you're like fulfilling some of the things that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Will you tell us a little about that before we talk about SWAN?
Sure. Also for the past, I would say almost more than a decade now, speaking of other certifications, right, in addition to asset management focus, I've very much focused on project management. I see that as a key disciplinary for basically being best prepared to carry out projects regardless of the domain, right? Which I think is a skill set today that's incredibly important, to be able to apply yourself in different situations and carry that with you. So for the past, I want to say 12, 13 years, don't count me on that, but I have a organization that is focused called Bird Eye Consulting, and it's basically focused on project management for high impact verticals. What I mean by that is whether that's business development services or consultancy services, all the way from in those impact areas of sustainability, water, energy, agriculture. Those are kind of some of the main verticals that I work in, and the projects really they differ based on the clients that I work with. It could be anything on trying to work with a startup on evaluating a new go-to market plan to be more commercially successful or looking to scale. It could be helping even some large engineering firms find a best optimal public-private partnership structure and framing that in a certain way that will be more compelling. So those are the types of initiatives I've worked on, but there always has to be some type of social, environmental, governmental even return on top of some financial interest for me to take on a project and collaborate on. So that's let's call it the side hustle, but in terms of hours, there's never just something as a side hustle. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. So
Yeah.
can you tell us about a favorite recent project or shout out to one of your clients, or do you not talk about that?
No, I do. I mean, I probably won't mention names just because I don't know if I yet have approval, but for example, a very large engineering firm is looking to partner with an AI focused wastewater intelligence company. So they look to monitor pipelines through the use of AI and machine learning to be able to detect ahead of time, right, likelihoods of failures. And so this large engineering firm was looking to add on the skill sets of that, let's call it agile, very fast-paced startup as part of their offerings to utility clients. And so the work I did was to map out what would, again, that successful public-private partnership be? What is the criteria for success? What are some exit strategies, and to facilitate those types of workshops? So that's a little bit of an example there.
Thank you. That's very
Sure.
informative. And I asked that specifically first because I think that gives credence to what you're doing at Swan, you know.
Right.
So will you tell us a little bit about
Of course.
Swan and what you're doing there?
Of course, Swan is a passion. And I heard also a member of your board, Jennifer Zach, speak about us, including one of our active members, WSSC Water. So that's fantastic to hear. And I'm just adding on probably to the great things they mentioned and said. So Swan is a global organization that stands for the Smart Water Networks Forum. We are a global organization. We've been around quite a while, at least for the niche focus area of ours, since 2010. It's in one sentence, we are a data-driven organization focused on accelerating the use of digital technologies in drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater networks. We run as a nonprofit, but we really have this global presence, especially across the Americas, APAC, and then UK and Europe. Those are kind of our largest representations in terms of members. So similar, I think, to ALN, we have a membership base. And our goal is really to, again, I'm simplifying something that's not too simple, but I think that's part of the goal of these kind of fun discussions, is we really try to just make sense of smart water noise. So the move to help utilities and guide utilities, we're very, very water utility centric. The move from to take on this journey of smart water, essentially for us, right, the adoption of those digital tools is a journey, and you might be at different levels or different stages. So the goal at Swan is to make sense and help you and guide you through that journey by producing the content, curated content that's relevant for you. So that educational component, calls and webinars on topics spanning cybersecurity. So what are things you need to pay attention to as you apply digital tools? We know it's not easy.
But it's possible.
It's possible, and you can simplify the way you explain things and the way you talk to, of course, your customer base, right? So
we are so well aligned. It's incredible.
Yeah.
We're
so
starting
that's kind of what we do. We guide through the education, we guide through research, and through just our collaborative ecosystem of thought leaders. And I think many of our members are overlapping in that sense, that they have a wealth of information to share.
Yeah. We're starting to talk with the UN. So we would love, if you don't have connections at the UN, would love to.
Yeah, let's
share that network.
My connection to the UN spans childhood. That was the reason my family moved to the US when I was a kid, was my dad worked at the UN. So it's full circle there for me.
Oh, definitely. We got next week, and I will say at our next meeting, someone from the Swan Network has to be involved in it. And
sounds good. I'm down. I'm pretty in. We have no red tape at Swan. We're in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's good about us too, is we're agile. Sure. We're so agile. We can say, hey, we see that Jennifer Zach is online, and we can make her a panelist to join the conversation. So let's let her prepare for that concept. And let me ask you what your role is specifically. Sure. Yeah.
Sure. So at Swan, I am the VP of Innovation and Strategy. It honestly just sounds nice, and like a nice title. So that's why I picked it. But in reality, what it means is really helping to focus our strategy moving forward, not only where we are now in terms of how we want to continue growing in terms of our membership, what partnerships we would like to form to amplify the reach, not only of our internal staff, of course, which are super precious to us, but also, of course, to continue amplifying the exposure of our Swan members. So that's kind of one of my roles. So drafting our 5-year strategy, finding those optimal partnerships, working a lot also in the Americas region where I'm based now in New York, to really grow our membership. And that accounts for about 40% today of our membership is in North through South America. So that's a little bit my role. Also, the innovation title is what I'm most passionate about, is those digital technologies that are truly helping water utilities on the performance level and mitigating risks. I'm also really interested not only in the innovation on the technology side, which is hopefully we all agree is fascinating, but also not just being attracted by the shiny, but how can we prove the value and increase adoption by also looking at other sides of technology, which is also the business model side of things. So how can we look at procurement in a different type of way in order to increase adoption? So I'm interested in innovation across the board, from change management perspective, from procurement, from technology. That's my role at Swan, is to come up with these types of ideas and keep our members engaged, and of course add to our membership portfolio.
Yeah, I think there are organizations like ours now because the acceleration of tools and processes are so great. It's hard for humans to keep up with, every 18 months having twice as much computing power. What does that
Right.
mean for my 5-year plan? I can't
Right.
even get my mind around that,
Right.
So we need to establish best practice sharing if we're going to actually get out of the mess we're in.
Exactly. And I think you hit it right. And I'm sorry if I'm interjecting here, if you have
No,
a set of questions.
no.
I think you hit it, is that I think contracts, agreements today, the way solution providers, the technology providers are going about things it's challenging to scale in this format of this one-to-one transactional model. I've spoken to Jenny about this as well, right? So I'm a vendor, I have one solution for you, take it. This is an off-the-shelf solution. Pay me X amount of money a year or some type of licensing fee. It can work, right? And some of the larger companies are successful in scaling, but in the water sector, it's challenging, right? It's a slower sales cycle. For some startups, or for some smaller companies, that's very difficult to scale in that model. So forming those partnerships, whether it's with those firms, whether it's joint ventures, really exciting with a local partner that really knows the local culture, the local understanding. Those are things that we're constantly seeing an increase of in the water sector today. That's really important because it requires being humble enough to know where you excel at and where you need more support, and where someone is, for example, use the word agile. I like that a lot. Where someone, maybe an organization, has a little bit more agility there to basically carry out a project and for it not to sit and get dusted for months. So I think that's incredibly important, and something that I'm helping at least collaboratively to drive within Swan and externally as well.
We promote the Miracle on 34th Street model. If you can't find it at Macy's, go to Gimbel's.
Right.
And just making those connections,
Right.
because there's plenty of problems that need solutions, and we got to, we have the Nick, if you can make Jenny a panelist, that would be great. So we have the privilege of being smiled on by the National Academy of Sciences, and we have many events there. And as you mentioned, Jennifer, Zach, and Yvonne Carney talked about Swan and our relationship at our last event at the National Academy of Sciences. But I wish we had the National Academy of Behavioral Sciences, because it's the human behavior that is in most need of help to get us past many of the issues that you were just mentioning. Hi, Jenny. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, well, you guys are going strong. I delighted to join you, but I don't want to interrupt the flow here.
No, it's not an interruption, but that's how Shirley just said you have to be humble. Well, Jennifer is among the most. She is so accomplishment oriented. Everything she does is top quality, and she's humble and thinks to say what she says. So how are things in Arizona?
Things are good. Things cooled off. But yeah, no, things are great. So one of the things you guys haven't talked about that I would love to bring up is the Swan circular model. And I know, Shirley, you had really worked on that. and how that really echoes and overlaps with some asset management models and principles with value at the center. I don't know, can I share screen? Looks like I can. Nope, I can't.
We will let you. I was just texting Nick to find the circular model and
I
flash
have
it up.
it up, or
Yeah,
Shirley
go-
has it up.
Yeah, I mean, I probably have it, just like I have pictures of my kids in my wallet. I'm kind of joking, but I have pictures of this. So if you can see that on the screen, I'm happy
Oh,
to talk about
great.
this. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just if you could let me know if there's any chats or questions about this, because I can't see that while I'm sharing. But thank you for the assist here, Jenny, because this is really a product, not just, of course, of myself. This is a product that we launched, I want to say about a year ago or so, but it followed a long process of kind of, again, reevaluating ourselves in terms of our frameworks, and are we at Swan providing resources and frameworks to make sense of the smart water industry. And I think words in the past of calls and workshops you've held or events have focused on words such as vocabulary and framework and terminology. For me, it's all about establishing right, some type of baseline. And so this started out actually from a different model that was just a digital stack model of numbers 1 through 5 in a linear, which suggests very much how you would build a technology application, right? So you move from the physical asset in a layered model all the way up to making sense of that data. So this is a model that, again, the original model existed for a long time in a vertical stack, but this circular model really was a transition. And it came out from feedback from the industry. We then held open innovation sessions with hundreds of our members, just providing input on the limitations of the previous model, not only just in terms of terminology, what was maybe missing as the water sector evolved and as digital transformation got a little bit more proactive in the sense of providing real case studies and tangible value for utilities. So we were talking about terminology, we were talking about also the structure, and that move from this vertical stack to a circular was the result of smart water, and the journey of applying technologies is not just a basic linear model. It is a journey, it is cyclical in the sense that we do want there to be some type of driver, so that was added, right? Whether that's environmental, financial, regulatory, organizational, some type of driver. It's up to the utility or the organization that's undergoing the journey to decide. And it ends with some type of outcome, right? You want to have some type of return on outcome, whether that's I for investment or I on the individual in terms of the operators themselves getting some type of value from this, whether it's, again, financial savings, resource allocation. So those are the new added models. But the goal is for smart water, this framework, to be used and to help people see that smart water is a journey. There are attributes that are relevant as you go about it to make sure that your infrastructure and your projects are sustainable. And I think that's where asset management really, really comes into play here. But at the heart of what we do, and I think this is what Jennifer was hinting at or touching on, is it has to provide some value, right? There must be value at the end of the day. And I know this is a little bit cliche, so I'll try to be specific here. Value creation at the heart of every smart water undertaking or project. And it could be, like I said, value for the people, the existing employees you have. Are you optimizing? Are you helping them actually perform their job and functions? Are you framing it in a way that their job is going to be questioned here? Is there a challenge here in terms of their job security? Those are things that you need to address. Are you truly helping them amplify their job and their output here by leveraging technology? It's also external. So your customer base, right, for utilities specifically in this case, is the application of those digital technologies going to help you provide better services and more reliable water services or wastewater services to your constituents and to your residents? The processes in place, right? The systems thinking processes, those procurement processes, are they truly fit for purpose to drive value to the organization? And then, of course, right, at least one of the base layers of SWAN is being technology driven. Is that part of your ethos within your organization? How are you addressing success factors? How are you defining success and optimizing that performance? So you can see here, number one, you have to have that asset in place, the physical assets in place. Some challenges, for example, and I don't know if there's members here, they're interested in property, right, or identifying where the assets are and how to prioritize, right? That's a huge part, right, of asset management, is where do you even start from, right? What are the physical assets you have in place across the plant. Is there a better model out there or method for finding those attributes of those different properties, whether it's on a component level, such as a pump, or a system level in terms of a wider plant system? Sensing and control. We can get into a little bit more of the technicalities of this, but for us at Swan, you have to have that initial physical asset that you're talking about. And then starting at that second number 2 there is, how do you measure? What are you sensing, right? What are you using? And that could be assets such as meters in place, right? And then what is the communication protocol you're using to actually transmit that data and make sense of the data that's captured, right? You have to first, be able to collect it. And then going on to 4 and 5 is kind of the extra smart layers. Okay, I have this information, I've collected it. How do I visualize this? How do I explain this? How do I embed this into, whether on the technical side, it's a SCADA system or a dashboard of some sort of mapping tool. And then lastly, where everyone claims to be, and where I would argue we need to improve on accountability, is number 5. How do you make sense of all that data across integrated and dispersed enough at silo departments, so that data fusion and analysis piece is where, again, a lot of proven smart Swan members do fall under. And then again, finding that outcome at the end of the day and being able to prove the value. And I'll give one, I don't know how much time we have, and I want to leave room for questions or this, but we've seen that this model, again, there's no perfect model. So we hope that this will serve as a tool. We have seen utilities and vendors and consultants alike use this as a framework to explain a smart water project and the need, or to buy or to explain the business value of a project, right? We've seen utilities, interestingly enough, I can give an example. Utilities use this as a way to get buy-in for the adoption of technologies, right? So as an investment strategy, okay, I'm now at this layer of collection and communication. This is where I'm going to RFP for in these following areas and measure their success. And I think that's directly related to, as you plan for asset management, right? Is that flow of how you're going to prioritize those assets and where to make investments, and how is it going to, again, provide value for your organization. So hopefully that's a little, I could talk about this
That's
for
great.
hours, but
that is so good. You
Yeah.
really did a very condensed, wonderful version of
good,
that.
I'm glad.
Jennifer?
I'm glad.
So I think, one of the, really great additions to this compared to the original stack model, like you were saying, the starting point of a strategic driver, the ending point being the strategic outcome. And that really falls in with key themes in asset management, where we want to understand mission, align our activities around our assets to serving the mission, to achieving the outcome. And I think for utilities or any organization, the opportunity for technology investment is overwhelming. There are so many new things out there. There can be the temptation to adopting the new shiny thing without stopping and saying, what does this actually achieve? How does this actually help us serve our mission and achieve what we need to do, and make it better? So, really tying that to value and that strategic outlook, a key theme in asset management, one of the key pillars is alignment, and making sure everyone's on the same page, that you've got that line of sight from why do we exist down to what do we do each day to serve that. So
Right.
when I saw this model and I thought about all the different asset management models, I thought, okay, we're talking about a lot of the same things from a different angle, different perspective, different focus, but very much complementary.
So Shirley, before you take this down,
Okay.
I
I wanted to know when I should stop.
I
sharing,
want
yeah.
to suggest that we could help you by assisting in copywriting this model. And we changed the icon in number 1 to a plane, train, or automobile, or whatever asset that group is talking about, because this works for any organization. And just people who talk water want to hear water and see water images. People who are doing electricity want to see electricity and et cetera. But this is a great model that can work for anywhere.
I agree. I agree with you, and I'm sure there can be adjustments, and it really is just a suggestion. And again, it's the support is because it was a collective output of hundreds of members from across utilities, regulators, consultancies, investors, tech providers. I mean, the list is endless. Young professionals that were new to the field, all the way to folks that were just about to retire and just wanted to join this session and contribute their experience over the years in terms of what was missing. So I absolutely agree. And I think that's another point is we at Swan and our members want to also learn. I just had a discussion with a member about this as well, want to learn from other industries where asset management has been applied, ideally, right? Leveraging data, because that's what I think brings us our organizations together, right? And making those data-based decisions for investment decisions in infrastructure and how to optimize assets. We have a lot to learn from other industries. I always see as water is catching up to some other industries. And I think now we're playing a larger role than many years ago. And I think that's great to see. So we have a lot to learn also from other industries, and we want to be doing that as well. So I'll just stop sharing, but I'm more than happy to.
Perfect.
This is available publicly on our website for anyone to download and use and apply to your own organizations.
Yeah, Nick, could you put up the Swan website in chat? Thank you. And we are over, but this is really exciting. So Nick, if you come in, we'll do an official ending so people who have to leave can leave. But then we'll stick around and have a after class session for the cool kids who want to stick around. No, I'm kidding. Thank you for spending the time you have with us. If you've got other meetings, have good other meetings.
Yeah, and we just want to thank patron members who help make this sort of programming possible, as well as other organizational members, and especially want to highlight Definitive Logic for their participation in this and other programming coming up with James Downs, Asset Management Executive at Definitive Logic. And with that, we're back.
Yeah, and we had a comment, and I hope John is still here. Possibly, when we were talking about how things are, kind of rough out there, he said that safety belt compliance started happening when there were this crash test dummies and commercials, and people were starting to understand what happens when you don't wear your safety belt versus when you do. And just a few months ago, the ALN decided we're going to focus on mismanagement, malfeasance, and abuse. And how if you don't stay up with best practices, industry best practices, you could be held liable because you're not doing things
right
the way. Now, we've always focused on the benefits, but what John is saying is we need a crash test dummy commercial for asset management. And unfortunately, there are fatal examples of what happens when you don't do it right, when you can't get things.
Yeah. First of all, I don't know if John, you're
he's still on
format.
Yes.
Yeah, he's still out there. I think it's an incredibly important comment that makes you stop and think and read it out loud again, right? Because it's very true that sometimes to spur action, you need to talk about the what happens in the event of failures, how detrimental that may be, and water is no exception. It's actually often I've heard an investor talk to me about this. Water is often seen as that antagonist. It comes to the story when you hear about an extreme event like a flooding incident or contaminant, right? And only then, if anything, right, there's some action, right? And I do think that needs to be obviously improved. And I think part of our goal at Swan is to leverage that information and provide those case studies to make sense of it and hopefully, right, guide those water utilities and the companies that we work with on that journey to prevent some of those incidents from happening. Not all of them are preventable, but some are, right? And I think the mitigation, the adaptation aspects of it are incredibly important. And there are those pain points. There are those drivers. I agree with you. I just saw Arthur use that. Absolutely. That's what we start with, right? That's what we've mapped out. That's what we've surveyed are those pain points. But unfortunately in water, in terms of their level of tech adoption and where that can be change averse, it's not really possible to fail, right? In terms of accepting that risk of failure.
Nobody.
If you accept a project that's going to fail, and that impacts public health, not only will that impact obviously potential elections and so forth, it's a highly political, right, subject, But that's what makes the business case hard for a lot of these technology vendors, right? Is that, but are they actually open to the potential of failure? That's one of the biggest questions here. That water, that's what makes it such an exciting field to be in, but also extra challenging. Is there this idea that maybe a project might lead to some unexpected outcomes, or how can we best kind of tighten up a project? And I think some of the things we talked about of rethinking procurement strategies to reduce risks for the utility that undertakes the project, and also for the vendor in terms of to help them scale. I think those are some things that will help the utilities. It's not going to change the complete failure mentality. I think that's not something that happens from today to tomorrow. But it is an extra challenge for at least the number of utilities I've spoken to over the years, that makes it a little bit extra challenging. But I agree with the interesting points here. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, Shirley, you're referring to the risk averse
Yes.
mindset relating to trying innovative new technologies. They talk a lot in water circles about everyone is in a race to be second to adopt. So when you are a technology provider bringing a new solution in, utilities can tend to be very, what we're doing, we know it's not optimal right now, but we're doing okay. And we don't know if we want to take a chance on this. But we've had some pretty spectacular, high profile events in water, Jackson most recently, Flint, that really bring awareness, like John was pointing
And
to.
action.
And
the Michigan
action for a time.
The Michigan Infrastructure Council was created by the Michigan Department of Treasury because of Flint, Michigan. And they realized that they needed a structured approach to not just water assets, but everywhere. And they are the best state in the country in terms of providing free asset management education to utility owners that are state-owned or serve the state throughout Michigan. And we want to see that
ALN
replicated.
Episode. Absolutely. So
yeah,
fantastic discussion.
I will say, to the credit of kind of the other side of the token of risk averse, is I've seen the growth of the utilities that are actually adopting digital technology. So it's been a fantastic progress. So I just want to give credit to the utilities of all sizes that are really applying technologies. And I think it's both a factor of internal change and leadership, and making sense of that information, but also on the vendor side of trying to simplify their value. And I think if you can do that in a certain way, that we have seen the adoption grow over the years. And what started out as 5 members at Swan is now hundreds. So that's an indication a little bit of that acceleration. And
And leadership, what you said, we were talking about how your leadership organization also is the key, because it's the leaders who are liable. And they need to avoid risk. And what our organizations do by highlighting best practices is give them confidence to make the decision to do something that hasn't been done before, but has evidence that can be successful when executed properly.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Swan Asset Leadership Network, leading the way to make that path to innovation easier, the business case more well understood, is a tremendously needed and valuable role that these organizations are filling.
Well, I don't think we can do too much better. Well, actually, Shirley, I would like to let you have a final word, because we could talk all day. Clearly,
we could talk.
We need to have dinner. That's just this.
We should have dinner. Yeah. I do work sometimes in Chicago. So that'd be great. I do want to touch on what John, and I do see him listed here. I know it's a webinar format, so you can't say hi, so I'll say hi. But one thing that this line has got me thinking, of this crash test dummy is really what spurred action. I can tell you in Israel, when we were listening to commercials about the drought and the Kinneret Lake, the Sea of Galilee drying out, that's what spurred action in terms of taking shorter showers. Like I can take a 30-second shower today and I'm still proud of that, right? So I agree with that. I think my last line there, just taking that same analogy of the crash test, is what we're trying to do is help utilities decide where to prioritize. Is it in the seatbelt, right? Or is it in the airbag? How do you choose what to do? How do you prioritize based on your specific organization, your specific budget, where you are looking to find potential savings or reallocate, or where you have the existing staff to undertake a project, where you need to seek external support? That's what we're trying to do, is make sense of that. And it is absolutely a tall order. So I just wanted to use that reference, because it's not easy, especially when you have often these competing projects in mind and yeah, methodologies in place. So that's a little bit about us and Swan.
Well, we've got to schedule something specific.
Yeah.
This is great. We got to get some of your folks and some
True.
of our folks and have one of these, and maybe do it like a limited participation, so we can have John and other people turn on. Anyway, let's talk about this, because
Sure.
got some good kindling together. We need to ignite it.
Sure.
Well, thank you very
Absolutely.
much, Shirley. And
Thank you, everybody.
everybody stuck around, so we weren't boring anybody. Thank you for
Good,
your
good, good.
interest.
Thanks,
And for
everyone.
all of you who listen to the recording, and in the future, thanks from the past, and reach out to either Swan or to the ALN.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.